1 cubic meter of compost once a month with a small urban system that only covers 16 square meters of ground. On a commercial level, you can produce 1 cubic meter a week or up to 2 cubic meters a week on a larger system. 30 chickens will easily produce 1 cubic meter of compost every week of the year. That's 52 weeks on half an acre, 2,000 square meters of production. Or 2 cubic meters covering a whole acre of production. What you do is you design a system where the chickens roost on top of organic matter, mulch, straw, any of your basic high carbon mulch type materials. And it needs to be at least 1/3 of a cubic meter. After 1 week of those chickens manuring onto that material, it's included in a compost pile as the base layer. On top of that is an equal amount of animal manure. That can be cow, horse, sheep, goat, any of the large animals. And then on top of that, you have to gather or accumulate 1/3 of a meter of food scraps or weeds from your garden, or a combination of both. They're put in a pile and the chickens are set to work. They naturally go for that pile and turn it over and spread it and disassemble it out, leaving a hard core in the middle and a spread outer edge. 1 week later, you reassemble that with the spread material in the core and the core on the outside, so they naturally allow you an easy way to turn it inside out. You perform that every week and make a new pile of materials every week. You fill up your chicken pen with mulch, you bring in more large animal manure and food scraps and weeds. Every week you make a new pile. 5 weeks later, just 5 turns in 35 days, you have 1 cubic meter of material coming out at the other end of the commercial systems, or 2 cubic meters if you have 50 chickens. In the urban system, you just turn it over once a week, from a cage to an open pile, from an open pile to a cage. And then you have a system within 6 to 8 weeks, you have a cubic meter coming out. And a week later, you have a 2nd cubic meter. It's the back end of our urban chicken composting system. And this door here lifts up so that we can keep stacking material in. It takes a few weeks to process our compost in the front end. Now, if we keep stacking here, we'll keep this full because the chickens manure into this every night and it starts to break down a little bit, and we want volume. Every time a lawn's mowed and we've got clippings in the catcher, we can put extra in here. It'll receive extra manure and it'll be better fertilizer as an initial compost component, because this is our bulk material to make our compost with to start off. By the time our compost finished, we've already made a good mixture here. Weeds out of the garden, they can all go in here and they'll start the process, because we've got 6 to 8 weeks of this material being continuously manured onto. And if it starts to drop in volume, because it's already decomposing, we can put a little bit more in. Diversity makes it even better. Then we open up the other side when we're ready to make our new compost, and we pull it out and we start to build our cage compost from the other side. So here we have the compost that's being turned all week by the chickens, literally disassembled, and then we have the cage compost sitting here processing for a week. And we take the cage off the one that's processing on its own, and we position it in the empty space, and we fill it up with the one that the chickens have been scratching and disassembling. We assemble it in the cage. A week later, this one's disassembled, and that's the spare space. So we move the cage from here to here, and we fill it up with the one the chickens have been scratching. And every week it changes. Over 6 to 7, 8 weeks sometimes, then we get a completely processed 2 cubic meters. So over a year, you get 12 cubic meters of compost produced in just 16 square meters of chicken system, and that's enough. But you've also got between 8 and 10 eggs every single day of the year. Can't get a better deal than that. If you set a system up properly, you can put frames right over the chickens and chicken wire all over the top and make sure they're 100% retained inside the system, because you don't want chickens getting into that fertile garden. They're not good in amongst that garden. They're going to eat your seeds and scratch through your vegetable beds. So they want to be well retained. And also at the top here, you can put in a big door, enough that this door or gate, a tractor can go through. A tractor can then push the material from inside through to the first pile and deliver new material in. So you can push through from the top pile, can get pushed to the second pile, and new material can come in and supply everything needed to make a new pile at the top and top up the chicken system with mulch. At the bottom, you can have a large gate door that a tractor can come in and take the pile number 5, the pile that's ready, out to the garden, and you can pull down the 4th pile into the 5th position. That means only pile 2 and 3 need to be turned by hand. And that's where you need to keep your eye on it as well, to make sure you've got a system where the compost is processing really well in the mid stages. Everything else is about fertility delivered straight to the garden and nutrient density harvested every day of the year. Okay, let's have a look at the main workers here, because the main workers are our chickens. And they're really in action because we've got a brand new pile. Pile's just been made here. It's been constructed with the roost material that's been under the roost. It's been there a week, it's been manured and scratched already. Then large animal manure, and then food scraps and weeds on top. Now here in the foreground, we have grapes. We have grapes going along the fence. All the way through the system, you can have grapevines over the footpaths. 2 meter wide footpath on either side of the main chicken system, and 2 meter wide footpath in between each garden bed. And they can have frames over as well, because in a cold climate, you can have glass houses or polytunnels, and you can lift the side of the windows up, or you can lift the polytunnel up in summer to let more ventilation in. In a really hot climate like a desert, you can have a shade house over the top and lift the sides up in winter. You can have trellises over, and you can have a deciduous vine crop over. You can have a perennial vine crop for partial shade in the tropics. You can choose the type of shade you have over the gardens, and you can trellis between over the footpath, dividing the gardens with a vine crop.